In a move that sent shockwaves through both Silicon Valley and Wall Street, President Donald Trump has just imposed a sweeping 25% tariff on Apple products manufactured abroad, chiefly in China. It's a decision steeped in political bravado and protectionist rhetoric, framed as a blow against Beijing and a push to revive American manufacturing. But strip away the nationalism, and what we're left with is a catastrophic miscalculation, one with consequences that will ripple far beyond Apple's balance sheet. To grasp the weight of this decision, we need to start with the basics. Apple isn't just another American company. It's a global powerhouse, arguably the crown jewel of U.S. innovation and the hub of a supply chain so intricate, so precisely tuned that even minor disruptions can send shockwaves across continents. This 25% tariff isn't just a tax, it's a sledgehammer to a global system, and consumers will be the first to feel it. The iPhone, already a premium device, is about to become prohibitively expensive for many Americans. Sure, Apple could try to absorb some of the cost, but that would mean cutting into profit margins and scaling back R&D, the lifeblood of future innovation. More likely, Apple will pass that cost on to you. Imagine the next iPhone launching at over $1,500. That's economic self-sabotage, and it doesn't stop at price hikes. The idea that these tariffs will magically force Apple to manufacture iPhones in the United States and that this is somehow a good thing is based more on fantasy than on facts. The reality is simple. iPhones made in America wouldn't just cost more, they would fail. Why? You're about to find out. But before we get into it, do us a quick favor. Hit the like button so more people like you can see this video. And if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel to help push us up the algorithm. We're doing our part to get the message out there.
After President Trump threatened steep new tariffs on some of America's closest allies and one of its marquee brands, Apple, that could impact the price that you pay for a new iPhone. The news sent stocks tumbling, with the Dow, NASDAQ, S&P 500, you see, all closing in negative territory in the red there. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor traveling with the president this weekend. That takes her near his estate in New Jersey. Yamiche, good morning.
Good morning, Peter. With this latest news, President Trump is yet again causing deep worry for America's trading partners and for American consumers who are worried about soaring prices for their Apple products, with experts saying iPhones could soon cost more than $3,000.
A 25% tariff on your iPhone if they're not made in America. That is the latest threat coming from President Trump to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. He's had enough in terms of hearing that manufacturing is being moved from China to India by Apple. Instead, he wants it brought home to the United States. But we've gone through this already. Analysts out there reacting today saying this is absurd, it's a fairy tale, ultimately because it is so difficult to move such complex manufacturing to a country like America. Already you need to build up the labor skill set, and the labor that it's far more costly is going to drive up prices. But you need the whole supply side ecosystem that at the moment only exists in China and is starting to be built over in India as well. So how does Tim Cook settle what is the ongoing aggravation of the president? The singling out that he keeps making of Apple and Tim Cook over the last few weeks has been relentless. Does he say, look, we'll make more components in America? And what does that mean in terms of a lack of efficiency, having to suddenly bring components back to Asia and to India to actually manufacture the phone and bring it back? Or do they actually try and build up the ecosystem needed to put together a phone in America? How many years is that going to take? Analysts saying at least 3 to 5 years realistically. Can he negotiate that with the president? Many say, look, this is an absurd set of tariff threats because they're not actually going to be enacted. It's just the negotiating tactic. Whatever it is, it's put a lot of pressure on Apple, its CEO, and its share price. Remember, it's no longer the most valuable company traded in the United States. It's below Nvidia. It's below Microsoft. It's only just clinging on to a $3 trillion market cap. And it feels as though many analysts are starting to worry about whether you should be holding the stock more broadly. We've got 4 sell ratings now, and it is a particularly under-owned tech stock compared to the rest of the Magnificent Seven. Let me know what your reaction is to the latest threat for Apple.
So Donald Trump is saying that he thinks the iPhone could be manufactured here in the US. Currently, they're manufactured in China. Even though they come at a higher than average price tag compared to other phones, they are still somewhat affordable for the average person in the US. However, now with the tariffs imposed on Chinese goods, the amount of the iPhone is going to skyrocket. And if the iPhone will now be manufactured in the US, you could expect to pay thousands for the phone. Thousands of dollars for an iPhone. If this isn't absurd at this point, I don't know what is. Just your reminder, Donald Trump has no idea what he's doing. These tariffs are what so many people voted for without realizing what they would actually do.
Can you make an iPhone in the US? It's going to be pretty darn difficult. Yes, you're hearing from the White House and President Trump time and time again, great time to bring US manufacturing back to the United States, looking at you, Apple. But have you seen how Apple makes its iPhones in China? About 90% of them are produced there, and they're entire cities, iPhone cities, made to manufacture these incredibly sophisticated bits of technology. You're talking about the right labor, not only the right STEM education, but also sophisticated knowledge about engineer tooling. The fact that you're basically eating, sleeping, gymming, going to the doctors, getting a haircut in these cities. And we don't have the space or the capacity to do that. These sorts of very finely tuned ecosystems of supply chain too are really only able to be found in Asia. When you're designing a new iPhone, you have to go out to your Foxcons and to your other suppliers and ensure that they're able to go in line with your designs, be able to change the whole manufacturing process to make one small alteration to how your camera works, how the chip works. Many analysts and thought leaders and people who've actually worked at Apple in terms of supply chain and manufacturing say that's just impossible to replicate here in the United States in any sort of short time frame. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. You're talking about basically the size of Boston becoming totally dedicated to making iPhones, downing tools, reshifting into this particular workflow. Are we really going to do that in the short term? And Bank of America says if you do bring production into the United States, well, the cost of making an iPhone is going to go up 90%. So I'm saying it's going to cost $3,500 for a phone. Yes, you can still put together a Mac Pro in Texas, as they do, but where are a lot of those components coming to put it together? From China. Such a complicated supply chain. So let me know if you think that we can make them in the US or a little less bullish.
Does it make sense for iPhones to be made in the US?
No, it doesn't make sense at all. If you want your iPhones to be a whole lot more expensive, then it makes sense. But it doesn't make sense for it. The reason that it doesn't make sense is this. First of all, we don't have the infrastructure over here for iPhones. We don't to make iPhones. We don't. Okay, so the whole supply chain that Apple has in production of its iPhones, AirBooks and iPad, everything, has taken a long time to develop. Probably close to 2 decades to develop this supply chain, right? You don't just take that entire supply chain manufacturing base and just bring it over to the US. It's not just about making the iPhones. It's about making all the different components that go to the iPhone. There's a pretty complex supply chain that's taken years to put together, all the infrastructure around it in China and other countries, whatnot, all the suppliers. You can't just bring it over here. It's going to take a long time. And number 2 is, why doesn't it make sense? Look at the standard of living over here, right? So you have to pay wages that are much, much higher in other parts of the world, right? That where the iPhone parts and everything that it takes to make iPhones, right? It's much more expensive here. It's just the nature. We have a much higher standard of living over here. So you got to pay more for that, right? And all the capital expenses to develop that infrastructure, to develop all the manufacturing facilities and, workforce training and all that kind of stuff. It's going to take a long time and a lot more cost, right? So all of which equates to what? A higher cost iPhones. And not to mention the fact that when the iPhones become more expensive, you're going to diminish their competitive, ability to compete with, Android phones.
Right, like you said to me the other day, iPhone's not just sold in the US, it's sold
all over the world,
right?
So if you make it more expensive, to throughout the whole world, that means you're giving a competitive advantage to their competitor, which is Samsung, LG, and all the other Android phones.
So why does Trump have such an issue with Apple?
No one understands what Trump's trying to do. Okay, Trump originally did this tariff nonsense, right? Because he said he wanted to balance out trade. That's what he said, right? He wants to balance it out. We're not being treated fair. Let's all be fair, right? You tariff us, I'm going to tariff you. And then also he went after China, right? Because he's a China hawk, what they call it, right? So he slammed China 145%. Now it's 80%.
And iPhones are made in China.
Yeah, iPhones are made in China. Now, if you look at from that perspective, right, he's trying to get more fair trade. But then when Tim Cook said, okay, fine, then I don't want to make it in China anymore. I'm trying to shift my production to India. And then he goes, why are you sending it to India? He just lambasted Tim Cook and Apple. Why didn't you make it here? Which is going back to my points just now. Doesn't make sense to make it here. And why Trump is not making sense as always is, do you want fair trade or do you want to completely shut down, any trade, any imports coming from outside the country for iPhones, right? What it is that you want doesn't make any sense what he's trying to do. At first he says, I want fair trade, right? I'm going to go make a deal with India. Great. Tim Cook's trying to make some phones in India. If you're going to make a deal with India, like, why are you making India? Why don't you make it here? It's typical Trump. What the hell is going on? Doesn't make any sense, right? So I think the other thing about making iPhones, over here is, this is a key thing that I think there are two key things that come out of this. First of all, I do agree that in general, not just with iPhones, with anything that we import over here, your supply chain, right? You want to have diversification. You don't want to have it too concentrated with one country. In this case, it's China, right? Now, even if it wasn't China, if it was another country, you still don't want your supply chains for so many products that the people of this country need to be concentrated in one country, in one supplier, because that's dangerous. They have much more leverage over you, or you're much more dependent on that country. You should spread it out. So it's a good idea to spread out your source, your supply chain, your manufacturing base. So that makes sense, right? But trying to say, I don't want all that and make the iPhones over here, forget about all the things I said just now about like infrastructure, the learning curve time and the time that it takes to build out the infrastructure, the capital expenses, wage issues, it's too expensive over here. The bigger thing, elephant in the room, is what's the biggest revolution we have going on in the US right now? That's born over here right now, that we're in the center of
AI?
It's AI.
Yeah.
And what's AI now? What's the buzz of AI now? Robotics, right? So you hear Howard Lutnick there saying, I want people screwing in iPhones over here. Why do you want to train your workforce to regress? Don't you want your workforce in your country to be at the forefront of technology and advancement? Right? We're a knowledge economy, a service economy. Trying to bring back manufacturing, like that it's the same idea as trying to bring back like manufacturing of like the steam engine, for example. You're regressing your people. You're trying to train people to go backwards. You should be investing in your people. You should be incentivizing manufacturing in this country from an advancement point of view, not regressing back to screwing a screw into an iPhone. There should be more focus on technology infrastructure. There should be more focus on things that bring about better education, better skills. We're to evolve your workforce to get away from that screwing a little screw into a phone every day to more things that are part of our technological revolution right now, which is AI. So from that perspective, it totally doesn't make sense to bring that kind of manufacturing back over here.
Got it.